To order. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Welcome to meeting number 13 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage.
Pursuant to the motion adopted by the committee on April the 31st, 2022, the committee is meeting on the study of status of the Artists Act and its impact on improving basic working conditions for artists. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November the 21st, 2020. Members are attending in person in the room and others are remotely using Zoom. Per the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on March the 10th, 2022, all those attending the meeting in person must wear masks, except when they are eating, and we should refrain from moving around the room. I also like to warn, and I know that this is something I keep saying, that you may speak with your masks on. You are heard, the interpreters can hear you, and it does stop aerosol particles from entering the room. Thank you. So I would hope that everyone would follow, who are in the room, would follow the mask wearing mandate of the Board of Internal Economy. Now, I want to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, please click on the microphone icon to activate your mic and mute when you're not speaking. Interpretation is available. If you are on the floor, you can get it in English and French, and you can use your earpiece to do so. For those and virtually, you can use the bottom of your screen and you can choose floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed to the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and the clerk will let me know that you have done so. For members on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can, and we appreciate your patience and understanding in this regard. If you find a problem with interpretation, please raise your hand immediately so that we can know and try to rectify to pause the meeting in the interim. Again, in accordance with our routine motions, I'm informing the committee that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting.
Now, I would like to welcome our witnesses.
Madam Chair, point of order. Just sorry to interrupt you. Just before we get started with our witness opening statements, we will be having bells at about 4:33, and we just had a quick chat in the room here, and there is consensus here that we go into the bells for about 10 minutes. So I think there's consent to do that, just that we interrupt ourselves now rather than interrupting ourselves in 20 minutes when bells happen. So I think you'd find consent for that.
Thank you, John. I didn't know who was speaking for a moment there, but now I see that it is indeed you. And that was what I was going to go to next, that we do have bells, but we also have witnesses who need to leave at a time certain. So if we would all agree to that, that would be so good. That would be so efficient and effective. Again, I want to recognize everyone. I want to ask everyone to please obey the Board of Internal Economy's dictates to wear a mask when you are in the room with your colleagues. Thank you. Now, we're going to begin with the witness list that we have here, and I shall begin. The first witness would be Association de Réalisateurs et
the Quebec Producers Association.
We have two people present, but I hope everyone understands that only one of you or both of you may share your presentation time. Canadian Arts Coalition, we have the Fédération Culturelle Canadienne,
the French Canadian Cultural Federation,
Gomez Media, and we have Société
Professional Society of Songwriters and Composers of Quebec.
Each witness each witness group has 5 minutes to present. I will give you a 1 minute yell so to cut through the noise so that you know that you have 1 more minute to finish what you're saying. If you don't finish what you have to say in 5 minutes, there will be an ability for you to elaborate as you get questions from the committee itself. So with that having said, I will begin by asking the Association des Réalisateurs et
the Quebec Producers Association.
Whichever one of you is going to speak, just indicate which one of you will speak or whether you're sharing your 5 minutes. So please begin.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, for giving us the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Gabrielle Pelletier, president of the Quebec Producers Association, or ARRQ. The ARRQ is an association of artists and a professional union that has been legally accredited and recognized under the Status of the Artist Acts at both the provincial and federal levels to represent and defend the interests of all directors who work in Quebec in French or in any other language than English. And this is in the fields of film, television, the web, and animation. Our association has over 850 members and will celebrate its 50th anniversary next year. This study of the legislative framework directly addresses directors because it is for directors that the ARRQ negotiates collective agreements and framework agreements to guarantee basic working conditions. I will now turn the floor over to Ms. Mylène Cyr.
Merci, Monsieur Pelletier.
Thank you, Mr. Pelletier. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you for giving me this chance to express our recommendations for possible amendments or measures to the Status of the Artist Act. My name is Mylène Cyr, and I am the Executive Director of the ARRQ. Although our association has only negotiated one framework agreement under the Federal Status of the Artist Act, we do believe that some changes to the Act could greatly improve its effectiveness. Our first negotiation with the National Film Board spanned almost 5 years and required 59 negotiating sessions. Fortunately, we finally reached a framework agreement. Negotiating a first collective agreement is often a very arduous process. It is particularly difficult for directors who find themselves alone to perform this function. So it is understandable that a balance of power is difficult to establish. Thus, to facilitate setting up a first agreement, the Quebec Act provides for the possibility of arbitration for the first collective agreement at the request of one of the parties. This is a highly important mechanism that does not exist in the Status of the Artist Act, which is limited to having a mediator intervene. This is still insufficient. In the event of an impasse, the mediator is obviously powerless to impose a framework agreement. An impasse can occur even if both parties fulfill their obligation to negotiate in good faith. We also believe that recourse to arbitration when a framework agreement is being renewed should also be available at the request of one of the parties, but under certain conditions. This is to avoid lengthy negotiations that penalize those whom the Act is supposed to protect. In addition, the parties could request arbitration after a certain period of time has elapsed after the start of negotiations, allowing the parties to truly negotiate and not unduly stalling the process. The Act should also provide that parties can use arbitration only for those matters that were not included in the agreement, avoiding the need to review all the terms before an arbitrator. Now, regarding government financial support for producers, few directors are currently covered by federal legislation. Radio-Canada, which used to hire directors for its in-house productions, now uses the service of independent producers. It is through negotiated agreements with these producers that basic working conditions can be required. Currently, a producer can receive government funding without having any obligation whatsoever to guarantee artists basic working conditions. These artists, hired on government-funded productions, have no social safety net. The pandemic has shown us how important it is to reflect on this situation. The ARRQ believes that the federal government must take the necessary measures to ensure producers who receive government funding guarantee basic working conditions. This could be done by adding as a condition of funding the obligation to guarantee certain basic working conditions, for example, with reference to an existing framework agreement and requiring accountability in this respect. Regarding the scope of the application definition of the artist, Section 6, paragraph 2bi, defines artists covered under the Act as professional independent contractors who are authors of artistic, dramatic, literary, or musical works within the meaning of the Copyright Act, or directors responsible for the overall direction of audiovisual works. This uses concepts from the Copyright Act, but appears to make a distinction in the case of directors. We feel this wording creates confusion as to whether directors are authors. However, practice and jurisprudence recognize that directors are indeed authors within the meaning of the Act. Therefore, this distinction creates ambiguity and unduly complicates the determination of a person's status as an artist. So we suggest the definition be amended to be closer to the definition that is used in the Quebec Act, which is a natural person who practices an art on a self-employed basis and who offers his or her services for remuneration as a creator or performer. Thank you for your interest, and we would be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. And now I'm going to go to the Canadian Arts Coalition. Is Miss Illy and Jacoba Knappen who are there, and I don't know if you will share your time or not, but we begin now for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the committee for undertaking this study of the status of the Artist Act and its impact on improving basic working for artists. Jacoba Knappen and I are here as volunteer members of the Canadian Arts Coalition, which is a coalition of artists and arts organizations that first came together in 2005 as a nonpartisan advocacy movement of volunteers and has been advocating for the arts and culture sector ever since. The world has changed a lot in the past 20 years since the Act came into being, and the basic working conditions of artists have been impacted by those changes. While the Act has made a big difference to the way artists and producers work together and how associations have been able to represent groups of like-minded, individual creative cultural workers, the landscape of artists' work has changed tremendously. What also became clear in the past 2 years is that there are other concerns that need to be addressed to improve the working conditions of Canadian artists. The first is the nature of employment. The fact is that most artists are self-employed, and what became clear during the pandemic was the inadequacy of our employment income program to serve the self-employed. The mixed employment realities of self-employed creative workers mean that some may be traditionally employed part-time while having a self-employed contract, and can also go through ebbs and flows of income regarding the seasonality of work. As the government looks to modernize the employment income program, the coalition hopes that the realities of self-employed creative artists be considered in shaping that program. For example, self-employed artists do not have an employer to pay into the system. This will need to be considered, as while some artists can enroll in an opt-in benefit program, many cannot afford to do so. Government employers and the self-employed individuals should all contribute to the self-employed benefit. If the new program is designed as an opt-in program, that self-employed workers can be able to terminate their enrollment when they change careers. And consider that the average income and hours of a self-employed creative worker will have spikes and dips between weeks, months, and years. These fluctuating levels will have to be considered when determining insurable hours and eligible income. We suggest that this program be available to those demonstrating a modest level of prior income and be available without prior contribution to the program.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Madam Chair and members of this committee. Another issue for artists is space. We all know that our cities are becoming less affordable. Housing is a top priority, but those who create art face a severe shortage of other kinds of space. Affordable and accessible space to rehearse, to create, and to perform. In cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, artists are struggling to find available, appropriate, affordable, and accessible space that satisfactorily fulfills the requirements for very basic working conditions. As Canadians have increasingly turned to digital experiences with the arts over the past 2 years, this has exposed the challenges faced by artists and arts organizations to meet the demands of their fellow citizens while being fairly compensated for their own work. Digitization has highlighted the need for the current copyright, licensing, and royalty regimes to be updated. The transition from live performances to digital experiences has also highlighted the severe technology gaps, the data access and poor infrastructure that racialized and Indigenous communities are experiencing. It's demonstrated that many artists and arts organizations require significant investment in basic technology and also, very importantly, in training.
As a result, the CAC recommends that the government expand eligible costs in programs that support digital activities through the Canada Council for the Arts and Canadian Heritage to include funding for acquiring the technology and equipment needed to record and distribute performances, and ensure Indigenous, racialized, the deaf and disabled, and other marginalized artists and arts organizations are enabled to engage in digital activities. Also, ensure that funding for equipment through programs like the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund is assessed and delivered in an expedited manner to help organizations, especially through the pandemic period.
Thank you. You have 20 seconds.
Well,
round it up.
Finally, the long-standing and painful truth is that those who contribute the most to arts and culture, the lifeblood of the $53.1 billion industry, the artists, are paid the very least for their contributions, and the Canadian Arts Coalition asks for support for a basic income program to ensure stable and effective future that recognizes the changing nature of employment for all Canadians, including artists.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Right on time. And now I go to the next witnesses, and they are the Fédération Culturelle.
French Canadian Cultural Federation.
Ms. Morin, 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Allow me to begin with the words of Herménégilde Chiasson, the famous Acadian poet, playwright, director, and former Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick. She said, "Being an artist means having the courage to invent our own world and to give generously of that world to others, not knowing whether our creation will ever matter to anyone, not knowing if we will ever discover that what we have painted, printed, sculpted, photographed, molded, or drawn resonates with another human being." These words echo with the reality of many artists and cultural workers in the Canadian and Acadian Francophonie who take risks on a daily basis with their work. The major gaps in the social safety net for our sector condemn them to courage on a daily basis. Their socioeconomic situation is first and foremost a veritable systemic issue, exacerbated by the pandemic. Even today, professional artists rarely have access to professional development, employment insurance, workers' compensation, pension plans, or other comparable social programs that other professionals enjoy. In addition, artistic work often involves a considerable amount of work that is unaccounted for and unrecognized, known as invisible work. This reality is compounded by the intermittent nature of artistic employment, which exposes our artists to significant financial risk, discontinuous work, and precariousness that speaks to a truth. Our artists and cultural workers do not currently have equitable access to Canada's social safety net, despite the essential role they play in the Canadian economy, and even more so in our Francophone minority communities. The UNESCO Assistant Director General for Culture reminded us that in the midst of crisis, culture is the link that unites us. It is cement that reduces the distance between us and allows us to recreate a feeling of cohesion and solidarity in the face of adversity. It brings comfort in times of anxiety and uncertainty. In 2019, the WHO confirmed the arts play a pivotal role in the health and well-being of societies, communities, and individuals. This is where the following words of Gabrielle Roy certainly make sense. Would we know ourselves even a little without the arts? A paradigm shift is needed. We need to be more sensitive to the realities of all Canadian workers and leave no one behind. Artists, artisans, and cultural workers in the Canadian Francophonie are an essential socioeconomic component of the vitality and sustainable development of Francophone minority communities for their sustainability. The precariousness of our artists and our cultural workers, which has been documented and amplified by the pandemic, must be eliminated. Consequently, they must also be protected by an adequate social safety net. It is impossible to talk about a viable economic recovery in Canada without talking about our workers. In the Canadian and Acadian Francophonie alone, our sector employs more than 26,000 people and generates over $1 billion in revenue annually. The implementation of fair, protective measures is also in line with Canada's international commitments, including the UNESCO agreements on the status of the artist. Specifically, the 1980 Belgrade Recommendation and the 2005 Convention call on member states to improve the professional, social, and economic status and ensure the sustainability of the social and economic rights of artists. This is why expanding the safety net to make it equitable for our artists and cultural workers in the Canadian and Acadian Francophonie is fundamental to the survival of our culture, language, and society, and to foster the sustainability of our Francophone minority communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Very well done. And so our next witness will be Gomez Media Inc. Mr. Brandon Gonez, CEO. For 5 minutes, please.
Thank you so much. As you heard, my name is Brandon Gonez, and my experience is unique. I spent several years in the traditional system working for all the major networks, including CTV and Global News here in Canada, but I quickly learned that there were limitations on the types of stories I could tell and the growth opportunities available. So I decided to go out on my own and launch my own digital media company, Gonez Media Inc. Part of this is the BG Show and News You Can Use, which lives primarily on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. After launching, I immediately saw the huge opportunity that online platforms can provide. Every day, I am able to export Canadian stories to a worldwide audience at absolutely no cost. And our growth has been remarkable. I started just over a year ago, and today I employ 10 people and run a full studio in Toronto. As an independent creator, I also have the opportunity to tell stories that matter to me, to represent local communities and diverse communities whose stories aren't often shared in legacy media. This committee undertook the study of the status of the Artists Act to consider whether there are other mechanisms the federal government should be looking at in order to support artists and creators. What stands out to me about the Act is, of course, that like many other regulatory frameworks, it doesn't apply to digital creators like myself because it became law well before the internet as we know it today existed. The internet has fundamentally changed the relationship between creators and audiences, and in my opinion, in a very good way. It has given me and so many others the opportunity to build our audiences and our businesses without government assistance and without government assistance. I encourage you to take this into consideration when it comes to your evaluation of the status of the Artists Act and other legislation like Bill C-11 that you will eventually be asked to study. I am here today to advocate for the next generation of creators who will ultimately be Canada's biggest cultural export. I thank you for having me today, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have about my path from the traditional broadcasting system to where I am today as a CEO of my own entertainment company, leveraging the power of the open internet to create Canada's #1 online news and entertainment show. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gonez. And now we go to the final witness, and that is the Société Professionnelle.
The Professional Society of Songwriters and Composers of Quebec.
Alonso.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, thank you. Madam Chair, on behalf of the artist members of our association, thank you sincerely for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Alexandre Alonso, and I am the Executive Director of SPAC, the Professional Society of Songwriters and Composers of Quebec. SPAC is a professional association of artists created over 40 years ago. In 1992, SPAC was officially recognized under the status of the Artist Act of Quebec. In 1996, SPAC was accredited under the status of the Artist Act of Canada. Today, SPAC represents more than 600 members. We provide basic working conditions for artists with an annual business volume exceeding $1 million, of which approximately 15% comes from our framework agreements with producers covered by the Canadian status of the Artist Act. Since its enactment, the status of the Artist Act has not been substantially revised. Today, several important legislative revisions are needed to ensure the sustainability of our culture: the Broadcasting Act, the Copyright Act, and the Official Languages Act. We believe that these laws form a coherent body of legislation to support culture, and the backbone of it all must be the status of the Artist Act. To this end, we recommend a new status of the Artist Act, a law that imposes technological neutrality. That is to say, a law that forces producers to negotiate basic working conditions for any new broadcasting channel or any new type of production within a reasonable period of time following their first use. For example, do you find it fair that when a producer develops new podcasts for a mobile application, the producer is not obliged, within a reasonable time frame, to negotiate framework agreements for these new types of productions or distribution channels? A law that imposes the services of our artists, that is, a law that imposes maximum use of Canadian resources on producers by retaining first and foremost the services of our artists. For example, do you find it fair that a producer can use royalty-free music banks from foreign services rather than using original compositions by our artists? A law that protects the Copyright Act. That is, a law that requires producers to respect the spirit of the Copyright Act by safeguarding the entirety of their copyright to artists. For example, do you find it fair that because of the stark imbalance in bargaining power, a producer is able to significantly diminish the effect of framework agreements by taking a large share of the copyright income, or even by obtaining a complete surrender of the artist's copyright? A law that imposes protection and promotion of French. That is, a law that requires producers in majority English-speaking provinces and territories to retain the services of a minimum number of French-speaking artists. For example, do you find it fair that producers in majority Anglophone provinces and territories only retain the services of Anglophone artists to the detriment of Francophone artists who are already marginalized? A law that imposes equitable treatment of artists. That is, a law that targets and requires independent producers who receive federal financial assistance or tax benefits to bind themselves to existing framework agreements or to negotiate their own framework agreements. For example, do you find it fair that an independent producer who receives government support, just like federal institutions and broadcasting companies protected by the Broadcasting Act, can use public money from taxpayers to finance their productions without guaranteeing any basic working conditions for artists? A law that thwarts business schemes. That is, a law that also subjects companies related to the producers covered by the law. For example, do you find it fair that a producer covered by the Act is able to create numerous subsidiaries, structure itself vertically, or structure itself as a conglomerate without any liability for those entities under its control? Finally, legislation that encourages the establishment of the provincial status of the artist legislation. The question is, has the Act contributed to improving basic working conditions? We say yes, but we strongly insist that, as it is, it's not sufficient to ensure the sustainability of our culture, and we invite you to proceed with a thorough review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, to just go ahead, Mr. Nader had suggested that when the bells start ringing, that we go for 10 minutes. I think these are 30-minute bells, so that I don't know how members intend to vote. I hope you are not going to walk back to the house, etc., because really many of these artists have taken the time to come and present to us, and I know that they want an interaction with you. So if we could kind of move forward to expedite finishing up this meeting, that would be really great. I will start now, which will only give us time, I think, for the first round, not the first round, but the first witness that is not witness, but MP that's going to ask questions, and that is for 6 minutes, Ms. Rachel Thomas of the Conservative Party.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, is that John?
No, it's Peter.
Oh, okay. Okay, Peter, sorry about that.
Yes, what I would suggest, I agree with your comments. We've got very important witnesses. I would suggest 5 minutes for that first round, because after that, I do have to run to the House because our leader's not there as House Leader. I have to cast a vote.
All right. Okay, so how does the committee feel? Do I have unanimous consent to do this? I see nodding of some heads, but I can't see the whole floor. So could the clerk inform me? Is everyone in agreement?
Madam Chair, I see general agreement around the table.
All right, then we will begin with Ms. Thomas for 5 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair. My question is for Mr. Gonez. Thank you so much for being here and for providing testimony with regard to the important work that you do as a digital first creator. My question for you, I guess, just backing up here, I find it really interesting, and I believe that you're producing important content. In addition to your YouTube channel, you also have a news show called News You Can Use, and I've had a chance to take a look at some of your stuff, and it's intriguing, and I'm inspired by your innovative approach. So my question for you is, I'm just hoping that maybe you can take a moment and just explain to us just some of the challenges that you had to overcome in order to achieve success as a digital first creator.
Yeah, thank you for that nice message, by the way. I would say one of the biggest challenges for any digital creator in Canada is probably access to resources, because the level playing field isn't basically leveled if you are not tied to legacy media. So a lot of the funding programs, if you are looking to start up and innovate, for example, it doesn't allow you to access those fundings unless you're certified through a traditional legacy broadcaster. But the reality is, what we found in just the last year of operating is that the audience has drastically shifted. And most of the audience that, if you're looking to connect with Canadians, actually lives online. And the traditional space, the audience is continuing to decline. So the biggest challenge with starting up any type of media endeavor in this country is access to resources, whether that's marketing, whether that's equipment, and all of those things. And so getting over that hurdle was probably the biggest challenge. I was fortunate enough to have, I would say, resources available to me, whether that's networking resources, financial resources, but a lot of resources that a lot of other digital first creators don't have access to. So I would say if you're looking at the biggest challenge, again, I would say it's access to resources to create a substantial digital platform.
Mr. Gonez, I can appreciate the challenges that you faced, and you highlighted that it is certainly not a level playing field. The current government is claiming that with Bill C-11, they're going to level the playing field. But under this bill, they'll be requiring people such as yourself, digital first creators, to contribute to the art fund. Right now, under the CRTC, that requirement is 30% of revenue right off the top. So that's not 30% of profit, that's 30% of revenue. And they're saying that a measure like this will help to level the playing field, but they haven't clearly said that in the same way you pay into it, you'll be able to pull out of it. And under the current terms, there's actually no allowance for that. So they're happy to take your money, but they won't be happy to give any of it back in the form of grants. I'm just wondering how something like this might hinder you as a digital first creator.
I think for any creator right now in this country, looking at the ecosystem and looking at the frameworks that are being developed right now and what the government is considering, if you live primarily on digital and that's where you live and breathe and that's where you've built your audience, the hope is that if there is any legislation where we are going to draw money from, digital platforms, whether that be YouTube, Meta, TikTok, whatsoever, the hope would be that funding goes back to those same digital creators who are technically exporting an immense amount of Canadian culture to the world.
There's 1 minute left for the interchange, guys, just so you know.
As a digital creator, and somebody who came from the legacy space, I think what is so fascinating is that the barriers that were once in place to export what we believe as Canadians to be entertainment, what we believe to be as art, what we believe to be as news, what we believe is to be as essential information, those barriers are no longer in place, because what is so amazing with these digital platforms is that you can reach a global audience without those financial barriers, for example, building up a whole network, right? It's right there at your disposal. So what I'm here and what I would hope that everybody is taking into account is that we have an opportunity to be a leader and an innovator in the world, where we create an ecosystem where we can have global content creators, global artists that no longer just have to worry about reaching Canadians from coast to coast to coast, but can easily access a worldwide audience.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gones.
You have, I think you have, that's it. You have 4 seconds left, but thank you very much for that input. Now I'm going to go to the Liberal Party and to Mr. Anthony Housefather for 5 minutes, Anthony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank all the witnesses for coming today. All of you are inspiring in terms of the work that you do. So thank you very much. And given that these hearings are on the status of the Artist Act, I'm not going to deal with C11. I'm going to deal with the status of the Artist Act. Premièrement, je vais aborder.
First of all, I would like to speak a bit with the FCCF because it really is an incredible association, and I have had the pleasure many times of working with them. And I applaud all the work that you do for the Francophonie across Canada. So thank you, Ms. Morin. Ms. Morin, in your speech, you brought up how essential arts and culture are, especially in Acadia and the Francophonie. What do you mean by essential? Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. So essential because the Francophone Canadian Artistic and Cultural Society are a pillar of this French language that we are trying to preserve. You know, the effects of the pandemic obviously were very difficult for the sector, and the sector is still having difficulty recovering, and the recovery is happening very gradually. We've lost many players along the way. Many artists have decided to change professions. So there is a significant labor shortage across the sector, and it also has hit Francophone Canada. For us, the reason why the recognition of artists and the important role they play in communities is so important is that when a cultural organization or an artist dies in Francophone Canada and elsewhere, what that means is that that's often the heart of that Francophone community that stops beating. That community is then put at risk. And that is the central issue of this pandemic for us. We absolutely want to ensure that this ecosystem survives the adverse impacts of the pandemic. Mr. Housefather, for someone who comes from the Quebec Anglophone community, I completely agree with you. There are two things that support remote and minority communities, and those are schools and culture. Which amendments do you believe we should make to the federal status of the Artist Act? And I understand that the changes you're proposing are not only to that act, perhaps you have other recommendations to other acts. So please don't hesitate to recommend those. Thank you for that question. First of all, I will address the status of the Artist Act. But before that, I would say there are amendments that must be made to the employment insurance program. Consultations have been announced, and the FCCF has participated in those in the past months. And the EI program, first of all, must be extended to gig workers, contract workers, self-employed workers, people in intermittent working situations who have no social safety net. So there are big changes that need to be made to recognize these workers so they can benefit from the Canadian social safety net. So I would say that is definitely a direction you need to be looking at. Secondly, of course, it's important to look at the notion of yearly guaranteed income. That would be very worthwhile to explore. We looked at the CERB and the CRB, and it really is thanks to those benefits that our artistic community was able to survive and continue to breathe during the pandemic. So I think it's absolutely worthwhile to look at that option. And 3 things about the Act quickly. First, please look at the definition of professional artists. One of my colleagues here mentioned that today. I think that it's very important to look at this in light of the international treaties that Canada has signed, and also look at the Canada Council of the Arts. Second, there has to be an obligation regarding socioeconomic situations. And thirdly, I would recommend unifying all of this because there is a Status of the Artist Act in many provinces, and it has to be harmoniously carried out in revision of this federal act. Thank you.
I think my time's up, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. My goodness, that's really on time. So now we have moved forward and we've ended the 10 minutes that Mr. Nader suggested we take, and I suggest then that with unanimous consent, we suspend until everyone has voted and we are able to come back to this meeting. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Chair. It's by the time that we get back, it is unlikely that we would be able to ask any other questions.
Mr. Julian, I think I have to seek unanimous consent. Mr.
Yes.
Nader suggested 10 minutes, and if you want, we have to go. We have Mr. Shampoo, and then you. That's another 10 minutes. I do it, as you well know, you have to have the ability to vote.
Yes, absolutely. I think the clerk can tell us what the count is right now.
15.
15? Oh, gosh, that's cutting it close. Yeah.
That's cutting it very close,
Yeah,
Mr. Julian.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Look, if
Okay.
everyone hurries and votes and comes back, we may be able to get the finish of this round and maybe one more round.
Hopefully.
And don't forget, we have 10 minutes of business at the end of this.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
So
Madam Chair.
suspend, please, clerk. Thank you. And I think resuming, can we resume now, clerk, or are we ready to resume? Thank you very much. Resuming the meeting, and the next questioner is going to be Martin Champoux from the bloc for 5 minutes. Mr. Champoux.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to thank all of our witnesses for their patience. This is a process we just can't escape from. Votes, you were very patient. I thank you sincerely. I would like to ask my question to Ms. Cyr and Mr. Pelletier from the ARRQ. And I'll get right to it. One of the things you mentioned was the lack of teeth or effectiveness in the status of the Artists Act of Canada currently. And I think we could succeed in making the law more tailored and effective. You also tabled a report with the government of Quebec, and you said that Quebec cannot develop every sector and that the government failed in setting up a Francophone development mechanism. Can I hear you comment on that, please?
Je sais pas si...
Answer. I'm not sure if it's related to the status of the Artist Act. Regarding the Act, our association represents a certain number of Quebec directors, and they have difficulty expressing their views and negotiating reasonable agreements. Agreements that would afford them decent salaries. For example, we looked at a study conducted by the University of Quebec Association. And these were directors of documentaries. Many of them work for the National Film Board. And the average salary is $19,000. And of course, when we look at that amount, that is the yearly average of a National Film Board employed director, between a scale of $83,000 and $108,000 as well. And we can understand that this is very difficult. Question. Mr. Pelletier, I'd like to come back to your opening statement. When you did mention the NFB negotiation that was very difficult, took almost 5 years before you reached an agreement. What were the hurdles that you encountered so that it lasted 5 years? Answer. There is no balance of power. As you know, when a film is being made, there's only one director. We can't negotiate better conditions. It's only one person. So, in our view, arbitration is the solution. It took 15 years to negotiate a collective agreement with one of our associations. And I told you these were directors of documentaries with an average yearly income of $19,000. And when they wait 5 years to achieve better working conditions, that is unacceptable. So arbitration transfers the power to the arbitrator to impose agreements, and then the parties will not be able to stall negotiations or negotiate in bad faith. Question. You also raised the idea that arbitration could be used for only a few stumbling blocks and not everything in the terms of the agreement. Do you have particular terms that would be the most frequent stumbling blocks, or is it general? Is it always the same thing that's a stumbling block? Ms. Cyr says, if you wish, I can answer the question. You're referring to the part of our statement where we said that the arbitration clause could also be possible at the renewal stage. So this is an imbalance of power that, again, is present. We need a lever to accelerate the renewal. But it's understandable that we need a time frame to negotiate. And one of the parties triggers arbitration and puts conditions on the table with the arbitrator. We don't want those to be the ones that were already negotiated. So we really want this to be something that will enable parties to detangle the negotiation.
And I will, that is the end. Sorry, Martin, that's the end of your 5 minutes. I will now go to Peter Julian for 5 minutes from the NDP.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to our witnesses, both for your testimony, which was very eloquent, but also for the fact that you are staying at later than 5:30. It's extremely helpful to us when we have to vote. I would like to begin with our witnesses from the minority francophone setting. So Mr. Pelletier, Ms. Cyr, Ms. Morin, and Mr. Alonso. We are examining the status of the Artists Act to determine how it can be helpful to minority communities. You mentioned binding arbitration and the fact that federal institutions would have to take into consideration artists' demands and to negotiate in good faith. What are the aspects that really need to be identified if we're trying to improve the status of the artist to help francophones in a minority community? Ms. Cyr, if I may, the current federal act covers very few directors. And we continuously observe that even though there are two Status of the Artists Acts and have been in place for over 30 years, fewer than 50% of members are artists that succeed in having RRSPs or collective insurance that are protected by collective agreements. So the producer associations are even at the point where they're telling us that a significant part of the finance or the funded productions are not to do with a union. We have artists working for those productions who do not have a safety net. So the burden of negotiating with each one of the producers for us is immense. And the artists don't necessarily have the resources to do that. In our opinion, since these grants are public funds, there should be conditions linked to those funds so that producers must provide basic working conditions. Then the basic working conditions would come from the source of the funding. And the burden would not be on the association to negotiate. Thank you, Ms. Cyr. I would now have to ask the same question to Ms. Morin and Mr. Alonso. Thank you.
Madame Morin?
Ms. Morin? Yes, hello. Thank you. Thank you for your question because it's a very important one. As I mentioned earlier, this act must have a result obligation built into it. This act overall needs is lacking. We need to add this part about socioeconomic conditions. As my colleague was saying, artists need access to a socioeconomic safety net. They currently don't have access to it because they don't fall under the definition of a professional artist, and they are completely excluded from programs that are currently in place. Either that or they have to pay into specialized programs. And they must also contribute to the employer, which is completely backwards given their precarious situation and their lower salary. Excuse me, Ms. Morin. I must interrupt you to give the floor to Mr. Alonso. Thank you very much for your question. First of all, producers must draw on the services from our artists from here. When producers use royalty-free music banks from abroad, they are not doing that. So first of all, they need to make maximum use of our artists here. Second, our association represents songwriters and composers in a given region and in the French language. But there are also producers who are covered by this act that are based in English majority regions. And as I said, they tend to hire artists who speak that language. So by imposing a minimum threshold of French-speaking artists who must be hired by majority English-speaking provinces, for example, that is a step in the right direction. We are convinced that the Status of the Artist Act is a basis for this sector, and we're saying that the French-speaking sector needs to be made best use of in order for the sector to be strong. Did I answer your question? Yes, thank you.
I think you've run out of time. I've allowed some leeway here so that Mr. Alonso could finish his sentence. But I think I want to thank the witnesses for coming and for your absolute patience. As I said earlier on, votes are a necessary evil and they do tend to take us completely off course. But I want to thank you for staying the extra few minutes, and I want to thank you for answering the question so very clearly. And now I think I will give time for the witnesses to leave so that we can just move on to our business. We only have 10 minutes, and if all of the members of the committee are willing, that could become 5 if we move very quickly to deal with the business of the day. Thank you. And thank you again to our witnesses.
Merci.
Thank you.
Clerk, can we begin? Have the witnesses all left?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, this is not an in-camera meeting, but we just really wanted to have the time to do it. This could be, colleagues, quick and dirty. I just wanted you to know that on April the 6th, we should go to actually finishing up our recommendations and from the report on COVID plus. So I think that would give the if we finish it on Monday, April the 6th, then we would be able to move on and get the report back to us in record time. We also need to have consideration of when we're going to do the Rogers and Shaw report. And I know that that Ms. Brown, Ms. Billy Brown would like to talk about that, give you a bit of headline on what she thinks and where she thinks we should go. And I also wanted to quickly say that I am hoping that we can have a subcommittee meeting on Monday, April the 11th. I think the clerk will let us know what time we can use because we don't have to stick to the ordinary time, and we can get that subcommittee report done. Can we do that on April the 11th, clerk?
Point of order.
Yes. I don't know who's speaking.
It's Chris.
Can you state your name, please? Okay, yes, Chris.
Biddle initial C. There have been discussions amongst the parties. I did send Peter an email, but he was away, and hope he speaks. I think there's some belief that there is plenty of time that we may have a bit of a light week ahead of us, that we can fit any committee business within the next week rather than going into the next week, and perhaps enjoy our constituency weeks. I mean, work very hard and meet with lots of constituents and do the work of the people. And that we're fairly well through the one report. The other report is fairly short. I don't see a lot of opposition I think there will be time to find time.
Thank you, Mr. Biddle. I just wanted to point out some of the processes involved here. I think we are not asking for a full committee meeting on Monday. April the 11th was sort of asking for a subcommittee meeting, which is only going to be the vice chairs, the chair, and Ms. Hepner. So we just want to get a clear sense of where we're going. So when we come back, we can know where we're going, because we have a lot of things to move forward to organize our schedules. We've got to also look at, we still have 2 more witnesses for the status of the Artist Act. And we have, again, the ability to sort of maybe hear from Mr. Billy Brown about what she hopes we can look for, so we can send her some sort of input before she actually gives us the Roger Shaw report. So would you like to move forward, Gabrielle?
Dr. Frey, Mr. Shampoo has his hand up in the room.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Martin. I cannot see the room. You are all tiny little people in that room right now, in my view.
Aucun problème, Madame la Présidente.
No problem, Madam Chair. I just wanted to come back to that proposal on Monday, April 11th. Here in the room, we were discussing that earlier. The vice chairs are here, and I think we agreed to settle things as Chris said. So during the next upcoming week, we can deal with that. We don't need to have a subcommittee meeting during our break week.
Mr. Julian has his hand up, Madam Chair.
Yes, I just wanted to say this is going to be up to the committee to therefore be able to find that time, because we still have to do the recommendations and the conclusions from the report that we have. We left in mid-sentence at the very last meeting that we had. Somebody else has their hand up?
Yes, Madam Chair. It's Peter, or Julian, initial P, and following Mr. Biddle's lead. I agree with both my colleagues. I think we managed to make it through what was a 74-page report in the space of the last meeting. I think this committee works very effectively together, and I think what we'll find around the recommendations is we either come to a consensus or we vote down certain recommendations, but I think it'll happen without any of us filibustering. And so I think we can fit it into next week. And unless the intention of the subcommittee was to talk about other things, and I think at this point in terms of legislation, it's a little unclear when that would come to us. I think we would be okay resolving things next week, as Mr. Biddle and Mr. Shampoo have indicated.
Well, thank you, Peter, because I think that promise of not filibustering and let's get in going on it is a great one. That means we can move forward with this particular issue. But I do think that Ms. DeVilly Brown wanted to talk to us about the Rogers Shaw report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I will let my colleague Marion just quickly explain what we would like to talk about next week, basically.
Just to let you know that the report on the transaction between Rogers and Shaw has been distributed this afternoon. So otherwise, I don't have anything to say about it. What's your question, Madam Chair?
My question is that I was told that the analysts wanted to speak to the committee about the Shaw-Rogers report. So I am giving you the chance to do that. Yes, Clerk.
I can add that's a very short report as asked by the members of the committee. There's a paragraph regarding the decision of the CRTC published last week because the CRTC accepted the transaction with some conditions. And there's 10 recommendations at the end submitted by the members. So essentially, that's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Clerk.
I believe that it's the status of the artist that Ms. DeBilly Brown wants to discuss with the members of the committee and the outline of the report. Just a 5-minute discussion.
Okay, because that was not the message I got. Anyway, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. DeBilly Brown.
Yes, this was, so by next week, we will have a preliminary outline of what we think the report on this current study should look like. We will have it distributed ahead of that meeting on the 6th so that you can come with changes, discussion, elements we might have been missing. So we can use that as our structure to write the report and come back with it after the meeting.
I do have one question because this seems to be changing at a rapid pace, but I understand we have 2 witnesses still to come on the status of the Artist Act, and that is CRA and Finance, who wish to come and present on this. When is that going to therefore be? Yes, Clerk.
May I answer that? So I believe that Monday is the Department of Canadian Heritage for the first hour, and in the second hour it will be the department, possibly the Department of Finance. I'm waiting on an answer from them, the CRA, and an independent tax expert from Quebec that was proposed.
So if that happens on April the 6th, this is the kind of thing I really think we need to talk about. Then when I thought we were going to go on April the 6th to finishing up the recommendations and conclusions from the COVID plus report, because we still have to finish that and give the analysts chance to draft an amended report based on what we're saying. So we have April the 6th, we can do fully all of the CRA and finance and departments with regard to status of the Artist Act, in which case we're going to have to find time on the following Wednesday, which is the 6th, 7th, 8th, to be able to deal with the conclusions and recommendations, because we have yet to deal with that. So I would like to get some kind of sense from the committee about how you want to square this very difficult circle. We have 2 meetings before the break. One of them is going to be filled with witnesses on April the 6th, or we can do the recommendations report on April the 6th.
Dr. Fry, I'm afraid
Yes,
I'm afraid I spoke in error. The witnesses are coming on Monday, April the 4th. So we have 2 panels of witnesses on Monday, April the 4th, currently scheduled, unless that's changing.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Because I've been getting this message about what I thought we were going to be doing. So April the 6th, we will be doing the report, COVID plus, and April the 4th, we will be getting the panel of witnesses to finish off the status of the Artist Act. Yes? Is that clear? All right. So now, does the committee all as clear as mud on this one? Good. So then it would seem to me that with the promise of the of Peter Julian and Mr. Shampoo, that when we get to the recommendations on April the 6th, recommendations and conclusions of the COVID plus, that we will move swiftly to deal with that so that we can have the break for the analysts to sort of tidy up our amendments, et cetera, and bring us back a new report to quickly okay and then move on. And so the
point of order, Madam Chair. Yeah, my longest speech in committee has been 16 hours, and I'm committing to not do that this time.
So thank you very much, Peter. I am thrilled that we're not going to get filibustering from you. Okay, and Martin has also promised that. So you are men of honor and men of your word. So therefore, we will be able to get a lot of the work that we want done before the 2 week, and there may not then be a need to have a subcommittee meeting during the 2 weeks off. Okay, well then that's a promise. So that's my understanding. Finally, that on the 4th, we're going to listen to the witnesses ending up the status of the Artist Act, which will be CRA, Finance, and the department. And then on April the 6th, we will go to the committee report, ending up with looking at the recommendations and at the conclusions of the COVID plus report. And if we do that really quickly and effectively, we may have some time to sort of delve into some sort of instructions for Gabriel and Marion on the Rogers thing. It will be really nice, I think, Marion, if we can get all the members can get a copy of the CRTC report, please. Then it may have us ready for that shore cable Shaw Rogers report that will come up hopefully at the end of the day on 6th. Is that a good plan if everyone feels we can accomplish that? You already have the Shaw cable in front of you, and I want to remind everyone that these reports that we now have are still confidential until they're tabled in the House. All right, so hearing no dissent, I think that looks like the schedule we're going to come up with before we break. So unless somebody else has something to add, then I would entertain a
Motion to adjourn, please. It's Chris.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. The meeting is adjourned.